Travis Cole grabbed Nia Bennett by the throat in the middle of a crowded Chicago mall, and for one frozen second, nobody moved. Shoppers stopped with bags back in their hands. A security guard reached for his radio. A little girl in bright pink sneakers dropped to her knees on the polished floor and begged her father not to kill her mother. Nia clawed at Travis' hands, her eyes wide, her breath trapped, her body folding under the weight of a man who had once promised to love her. Then Travis leaned close and whispered, "You are nothing without me." Before we continue, comment what time you're watching and where in the world you're from. And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you simply cannot miss. The words had barely left his mouth when the first scream tore through the mall. It came from an older woman near the entrance of the shoe store, a woman who had been holding a birthday present for her grandson. Her scream broke whatever spell had paralyzed the crowd. A young man in a Bulls hoodie dropped his drink and rushed forward. A father pulled his two children behind a kiosk. A store clerk slammed a panic button under the counter so hard her nail cracked. And still Travis did not let go. His face was calm in the worst possible way. Not angry in the loud way. Not wild in the way people could explain later and say he lost control. No. Travis Cole looked like a man who believed the world owed him obedience. He looked like a man who had practiced this moment in smaller rooms, behind closed doors, in kitchens, where neighbors heard things and turned up their televisions, in parking lots where Nia had learned to keep her voice soft so no one would stare. He wore a navy wool coat, expensive leather gloves, and a smile that made the air around him feel colder than Chicago winter. Nia had brought her daughter Grace to the mall because Grace needed new shoes for school. Not fancy shoes, not designer shoes, just sturdy white sneakers from a discount rack, because Nia had been saving tips from the hotel front desk for 3 weeks. She had promised Grace that after shoes they could share a cinnamon pretzel and sit by the fountain. It was supposed to be a small good day, the kind of day a single mother builds carefully out of sacrifice and hope. But Travis found them. He always found them, even with a restraining order. Even after the judge had told him to stay away. Even after the police report. Even after the bruises faded enough for Nia to convince herself that maybe fear could become memory if she worked hard enough. He stepped out from behind a pillar near the escalators as if he had been waiting all afternoon. Grace saw him first. Her smile disappeared. Nia felt her daughter's little hand tighten around hers, and that was when she knew, not with her mind, with her body. Her ribs seemed to remember before her thoughts did. Her stomach dropped, her shoulders locked. She turned to leave, but Travis was already walking fast. "Too fast, Nia," he called. His voice was smooth and public, the kind of voice men like him used when they wanted strangers to think they were reasonable. "Do not walk away from me." Nia kept moving. "Grace, stay close," she whispered. "Mommy," Grace said, and there was such terror in that one word that Nia almost broke right there. They made it 6 steps before Travis caught her arm. The shopping bag slipped from Nia's hand and the little white sneakers tumbled onto the floor. Grace bent to pick them up, but Nia pushed her back. "Do not touch her," Nia said. Her voice shook, but it was clear. Travis laughed softly. "You got brave working that hotel desk, huh?" Several people turned. Nia felt their eyes on her. She felt the old shame rise up hot and unwanted, as if she had done something wrong by being attacked in public. That was one of the cruelest lessons Travis had taught her. Fear makes victims feel responsible for the discomfort of witnesses. Nia raised her chin. "There is a court order. You need to leave." Travis' smile thinned. "A court order?" He looked around at the shoppers now watching from a careful distance. "You hear that? She thinks a piece of paper makes her somebody." A white man in a gray suit near the escalator frowned but did not move. A teenage girl lifted her phone. A mall employee stepped halfway out of a store, then stepped back in. "Nia, you reach for Grace. We are leaving." Travis moved faster than anyone expected. His hand shot to Nia's throat. He drove her backward against the glass railing beside the atrium, hard enough that the metal frame rattled. Grace screamed. The sound cut through the mall like a blade. For Nia, the world shrank to fragments. Travis' breath smelled like mint. His glove pressed into the side of her neck. The ceiling lights blurred above him. She could hear coins splashing in the fountain below. She could hear Grace crying. She could hear her own breath failing. Travis leaned in, his lips almost touching her ear. "You embarrassed me in court," he whispered. "You stood up there in front of that black lady judge and acted like I was some animal. You thought that order made you safe." His grip tightened. "You belong to me." Grace dropped to her knees. Her small hands came together in prayer, the way Nia had taught her when thunderstorms scared her at night. "Daddy, please," Grace sobbed. "Please stop. Please stop hurting Mommy. I will be good. I promise. Please." Travis did not even look at her. That was what made several strangers cry later when they gave statements. Not only the violence, the indifference. He heard his own child begging and seemed to enjoy the sound. He looked into Naya's eyes and said, "Even your kid knows who has the power." Something changed then, not in Travis, in the crowd. The young man in the Bulls hoodie slammed into Travis from the side. A security guard grabbed Travis' shoulder, another guard seized his arm. Travis cursed and swung backward, striking one guard across the cheek. Nia collapsed to the floor, coughing, pulling air into her body like it was water and she had been drowning. Grace crawled to her and wrapped both arms around her waist. Nia held her daughter with one arm and touched her own throat with the other. Her skin burned, her voice would not come. Travis fought the guards until 2 police officers arrived from the mall substation. Even then, he shouted as they forced his hands behind his back. "She is my wife," he yelled, though the divorce had been final for almost a year. "This is family business." One officer, a broad black woman with calm eyes and a steady voice, looked at him with disgust. Choking a woman in front of a child in public is not family business. Travis turned his head toward her, his face twisted. "Of course you would take her side." The officer tightened the cuffs. "Keep talking, you are helping my report." Nia sat on the floor with Grace in her lap and watched Travis being taken away through the same mall entrance where holiday decorations still hung from the ceiling. People whispered. Phones recorded. A little boy cried because he had never seen adults become monsters before. The clerk from the shoe store knelt beside Nia and placed the white sneakers back into the shopping bag with trembling hands. "You do not have to pay," she said. "Please just take them." Nia tried to say thank you, but only a broken rasp came out. Grace looked at the shoes, then at her mother's neck, and her face crumpled again. At that exact moment, Nia thought of her own mother. She thought of Evelyn Bennett standing in a courthouse hallway 8 years earlier, wearing a cream coat and smiling even though she was scared. She thought of her father, Marcus Bennett, surrounded by marshals and reporters, too important, too protected, too far away to see that his own family was cracking under the weight of the enemies he had made. Nia had not spoken to him in 8 years. Not after the funeral. Not after the shouting in the kitchen. Not after she told him that his justice had cost them everything. But when the police asked for an emergency contact at the hospital, Grace gave them a name before Nia could stop her. "My grandpa," the child whispered, "Judge Marcus Bennett." The officer looked up sharply. Everyone in Chicago federal law knew that name. Marcus Bennett was not just a judge. He was a force. A black federal judge who had risen from the South Side with a reputation for discipline so severe that lawyers lowered their voices when he entered a room. He had sentenced corrupt aldermen, gang leaders, crooked financiers, and men who thought money could buy silence. He had survived threats, smear campaigns, and newspaper editorials that called him cold, arrogant, untouchable. What the public did not know was that after his wife died, Marcus Bennett stopped living in any room that did not contain law books, security glass, and silence. The call reached him at 6:27 in the evening while he was in chambers, reviewing a sentencing memo under the yellow glow of a desk lamp. His clerk, Daniel Price, knocked once and entered with a face Marcus had never seen on him before. "Judge Bennett," Daniel said carefully, "there is a call from Chicago police. It concerns your daughter." The pen in Marcus' hand stopped moving. For 8 years, men had threatened him, cursed him, tried to intimidate him, and he had never flinched. But those 3 words, "your daughter," took the strength out of his fingers. "Put it through," he said. His voice was level, but Daniel saw his hand close slowly around the edge of the desk. The officer on the line spoke with professional restraint. Marcus listened without interrupting. Restraining order, assault, child witness, hospital evaluation, suspect arrested, daughter injured, granddaughter traumatized. By the time the call ended, Marcus was already standing. He took his black overcoat from the chair. Daniel moved toward him. "Your security detail? And call Assistant Chief Rhodes," Marcus said. "Tell him I want every report preserved, every camera angle secured, every witness identified, every officer body camera logged." Daniel hesitated. "Sir, because it is family, you may want to be careful about appearing to intervene." Marcus turned. The look on his face was not anger. It was something older and heavier. "I am not intervening as a judge. I am arriving as a father." 20 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the station on West Monroe. Snow had begun to fall in thin, restless sheets, turning the pavement silver under the streetlights. Reporters had already gathered because Travis Cole had been a rising real estate developer with donors, friends, and a habit of appearing at charity events beside city officials. Someone had leaked the mall video. Someone always did. A woman from a local news station was speaking into a microphone when Marcus stepped out of the middle SUV. The camera swung toward him. The chatter died. He was 72 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cut silver hair and a face carved by discipline and grief. He wore a charcoal overcoat over a dark suit, no jewelry, except a plain wedding band he had never removed. Two federal marshals flanked him, but he moved ahead of them as if protection were an insult he tolerated only for the comfort of others. Inside the station, phones rang, officers moved quickly, and the smell of burnt coffee hung in the air. But when Marcus Bennett entered, the room shifted, not because he demanded it, because certain people carry authority the way storm clouds carry thunder. A lieutenant approached. Judge Bennett. Marcus nodded once. Where is my daughter? Interview room 2. Paramedics cleared her, but she refused the hospital transport until she saw her child stable. Her daughter is with a victim advocate. Marcus' eyes closed for half a second. Her name is Grace. Yes, sir. Grace. The lieutenant guided him down a hallway. Each step Marcus took seemed to pull him back through 8 years of regret. He remembered Nye at 17, arguing with him about college applications. Nye at 21, wearing her mother earrings to graduation. Nye at 26, standing at Evelyn's grave in a black dress, shaking with rage, telling him not to touch her shoulder. He had respected her pain then. That was what he told himself. He had given her space. That was the lie. The truth was simpler and uglier. He had been afraid to face the daughter, who blamed him for a death he already blamed himself for. The lieutenant opened the door. Nia sat at a metal table, wearing a gray police blanket around her shoulders. Her throat was marked. Her eyes were red. Her hair had slipped from its bun. She looked older than the daughter he remembered, and younger than the woman she had been forced to become. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Marcus stood in the doorway like a man staring at a verdict. Nia lifted her eyes. The room held 8 years in one breath. So, she said, her voice raw from injury. Now you show up. The lieutenant quietly stepped back and closed the door. Marcus did not move toward her. He knew better than to assume he had the right. Nia. She laughed once, but it broke before it became sound. Do not say my name like that. Like you are still my father. The words struck him, but he accepted them. I never stopped being your father. You stopped being there. Her hands trembled on the blanket. There is a difference. Marcus lowered himself into the chair across from her, slowly, respectfully, like entering a courtroom where someone else had the authority. Yes, he said. That single word seemed to anger her more than any defense could have. Do not agree with me like this is one of your hearings. Do not sit there with that calm judge voice. Her eyes filled. Mom is dead because of the world you built around us. Because men hated you. Because you put them away and walked back into our house like justice was a shield. It was not a shield for her. Marcus looked down at his hands. He had sentenced men for murder with those hands folded before him. He had signed warrants, opinions, orders. Yet he had not held his wife's hand when she took her last breath after the crash that followed a threat meant for him, a threat everyone had believed was just talk until it became twisted metal on Lakeshore Drive. I know, he said. Nia leaned forward. No, you do not know. You got condolences from senators. You got police escorts. You got articles calling you brave. I got a coffin. I got a mother who never came home. I got a father who disappeared into work because guilt was easier than parenting. Her voice cracked. And then I married a man who sounded powerful because I had forgotten what safe felt like. Marcus' face changed. It was slight, but Nia saw it. A fracture under stone? That is not your fault. Do not tell me what is not my fault. It is not your fault, he repeated, and this time the judge's voice was gone. He sounded like a father begging his child to believe one true thing. What he did today was not your fault. What he did before today was not your fault. What happened to your mother was not your fault. And Nia, my absence was not your fault. She looked away, tears falling now. Grace begged him. She begged him like it was her job to save me. Marcus' jaw tightened. Where is she? With a social worker. She thinks if she had screamed sooner, he would have stopped. Nia covered her mouth. She is 7 years old, Daddy. The word slipped out before she could stop it. Daddy. It landed between them with the force of a prayer neither of them knew they still remembered. Marcus' eyes shone, but he did not reach for her. I have spent 8 years grieving your mother, he said quietly, but grief is no excuse for cowardice. I told myself you did not want me. I told myself my presence would reopen wounds. I told myself giving you distance was respect. But the truth is, I could face killers in court more easily than I could face the pain in my own daughter's eyes. Nia stared at him. Marcus continued, I cannot undo what I failed to do. I cannot bring Evelyn back. I cannot erase Travis Cole's hand from your throat or Grace's memory of that floor. But I can stand between him and you now. Not as a judge, not as a title, as your father, and if you allow it, as Grace's grandfather. Nia wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. And what happens when your enemies come again? They are already here, Marcus said. Some wear expensive coats and call abuse family business. Some hide behind money. Some hide behind race. Some hide behind silence. I have spent my life learning their language. His voice became steady, not cold but unbreakable. This time, I will not confuse work with protection. This time, my family comes first. The door opened slightly and a victim advocate looked in. Miss Bennett, Grace is asking for you. Nia stood quickly and winced. Marcus rose at the same time. The advocate stepped aside, and Grace appeared behind her, small and pale in a borrowed police sweatshirt. Her curls were loose around her face. She clutched the shopping bag with the white sneakers inside as if it were the last normal thing left in the world. For a moment, she looked only at Nia. Then her eyes moved to Marcus. Children know more than adults admit. Grace had seen pictures of him in an old album Nia kept hidden in a box under her bed. She had once asked why Grandpa looked so sad. Nia had said because he lost someone. Grace took one uncertain step into the room. Are you my grandpa? Marcus bent slightly so he would not tower over her. Yes. Grace studied his face. Mommy said you wear a robe at work. Sometimes, are you like a wizard? For the first time in years, a sound close to laughter moved through Mark's chest. No, sweetheart. I am only a judge. Grace looked at Nia's throat, then back at Marcus. Can judges make bad people stop? Marcus swallowed. Every adult in that room felt the weight of the question. Judges can help, he said. But grandfathers can stand close. I should have stood close sooner. Grace walked to him and held up the shopping bag. Mommy bought me shoes. Daddy ruined it. Marcus took that bag carefully, as if it contained evidence of a sacred crime. Then tomorrow, he said, we will buy socks to match them. Grace blinked. Really? Really? She looked at Nia for permission. Nia nodded, crying silently. Grace stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Marcus' waist. The old judge closed his eyes. For 8 years, his house had been quiet enough to hear grief breathing. Now a child held him like shelter, and he realized something that almost brought him to his knees. Power without someone to protect is just a locked room. By midnight, Marcus had made arrangements. Not illegal arrangements, not influence, not pressure. Everything had to be clean because he knew men like Travis survived by turning accountability into conspiracy. Marcus called people who owed him nothing but respected the law. A retired marshal named Samuel Reed, a family attorney named Claire Donovan, a trauma counselor who had worked with children after violent events, a building manager at a secure high-rise near the river, where judges, prosecutors, and federal witnesses sometimes stayed when threats became credible. Nia objected at first. I do not want charity. Marcus stood in the hallway of the station while Grace slept on a vinyl couch under a blanket. It is not charity. Then what is it? He looked at her with the same eyes she remembered from childhood, stern and gentle at once. It is a father doing late what he should have done early. The secure apartment was on the 28th floor of a building overlooking the Chicago River. It had thick windows, controlled elevator access, a guard desk staffed by retired law enforcement, and a view of the city lights trembling on black water. Nia entered with Grace, sleeping against her shoulder, and stopped in the living room. There were fresh groceries in the kitchen, a small vase of yellow tulips on the table, a folded blanket on the sofa. Nothing extravagant, nothing showy, just prepared. Grace woke when Marcus opened the second bedroom. The room had been set up for a child, not by a decorator who guessed, but by someone who had listened. There were art supplies, a bookshelf, a soft rug, a nightlight shaped like a moon, and a small desk by the window. On the bed sat a stuffed lion wearing a tiny blue scarf. Grace slipped from Nia's arms and walked toward it. Is this for me? Marcus nodded. His name can be whatever you choose. Grace picked up the lion and pressed her face into its mane. Justice, she whispered. Nia closed her eyes. Marcus said nothing. Then he led Nia to the dining table where a folder waited beside a cup of tea. Nia saw her name on the tab and stiffened. What is that? Open it when you are ready. No, tell me. Marcus hesitated. Law school information, application deadlines, scholarship options, letters from 2 professors who remembered you. Nia stared at him. You contacted my professors? Years ago. Her expression hardened. You tracked my life? No, he said. I kept hope nearby. She opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were brochures from Northwestern, Loyola, University of Chicago public interest programs, notes about part-time study, child care support, legal aid fellowships. There was also a photograph of Nia at 21. Standing beside Evelyn outside the courthouse after winning a college debate competition. On the back, in Evelyn handwriting, were the words, Our girl argues like fire and loves like rain. Nia pressed the photo to her chest. I gave that up. You survived, Marcus said. Those are not the same thing. She looked toward Grace's room. I cannot go to law school. I work nights at the hotel. I have court dates. I have a child who wakes up screaming. Then we solve one problem at a time. You make it sound simple. No, Marcus said. I make it sound possible. That night, Nia slept on top of the covers in the guest room because her body had forgotten how to rest in safety. Marcus sat in the living room until dawn, reading the police report again and again. Each line was clinical. Victim stated. Suspect approached. Minor child witnessed. Visible redness. Temporary breathing obstruction. But behind every cold phrase was his daughter fighting for air. Behind every timestamp was his granddaughter praying on a mall floor. Around 4 in the morning, Grace came out holding the stuffed lion. She found Marcus by the window. Grandpa? Yes, sweetheart. Do bad dreams count if you wake up? Marcus moved slowly, making sure she could decide whether to come closer. They count as something your heart is trying to understand. Grace climbed onto the far end of the sofa. Daddy said Mommy is nothing without him. Marcus felt rage rise in him so suddenly, his vision sharpened, but he did not let it touch his voice. Your mother was somebody before she met him. She was somebody while he tried to make her forget. And she will be somebody long after his voice no longer scares her. Grace hugged Justice the lion. Am I somebody? Marcus turned fully toward her. Grace Bennett, you are not only somebody, you are a child of courage. You knelt on that floor because you wanted to save your mother. But listen to me carefully. It was never your job to stop a grown man from doing wrong. Grace's eyes filled. But I did not stop him. The wrong was his. The shame was his. The responsibility was his. Marcus leaned forward. Your job is to grow, to learn, to laugh again, to tell the truth when you are ready, and to know that love should never make you afraid. Grace considered this. Did you make Mommy afraid? The question cut deeper than anything Travis had said. Marcus looked toward the hallway where Tia slept. I made your mother lonely when she needed me. That is a different kind of hurt, but it is still hurt. Will you say sorry? Every day, if she needs me to. Grace nodded solemnly. Good. Grown-ups should say sorry too. Yes, Marcus said, they should. In the days that followed, Chicago seemed to divide itself around the case. The mall video spread across local news, then national morning shows, then social media pages that turned pain into debate before Nia had even chosen what to eat for breakfast. Some people called Travis a monster. Some asked what Nia had done to provoke him. Some praised the strangers who helped. Others complained that no one stepped in fast enough. But the ugliest comments came from people who saw a black woman, a powerful black judge, and a white businessman in handcuffs, and decided the story had to be something other than what their eyes showed them. Travis' attorney, Bradley Whitman, understood that ugliness and tried to use it. He was a polished man with silver cufflinks, a voice like warm butter, and a reputation for making juries doubt bruises. On the morning of Travis' bond hearing, Bradley stood outside the courthouse and told reporters that his client was a respected developer, a father, and a victim of a personal conflict being inflamed by powerful interests. We are concerned, Bradley said, about whether Mr. Cole can receive fair treatment when the alleged victim is connected to one of the most influential federal judges in this city. He never said Marcus Bennett's name with open disrespect. He did not have to. The implication was enough. A reporter asked, "Are you suggesting Judge Bennett is interfering?" Bradley smiled sadly, as if forced to discuss something unpleasant. I am suggesting that power must be watched carefully, no matter who holds it. Across town, Marcus watched the clip once, then turned it off. Nia stood behind him in the apartment kitchen, wearing a scarf around her neck to hide the fading marks. He is making it about you, she said. Yes. Can he do that? He can try. What happens if people believe him? Marcus looked at her. Then we answer with evidence, procedure, and truth. Not outrage. Outrage burns hot and fades fast. Truth walks slowly but it arrives. Nia laughed bitterly. That sounds like something from one of your sentencing speeches. Maybe. I am tired of being a lesson. Marcus softened. Then be a person. Eat breakfast. Take Grace to therapy. Let the lawyers handle court. Let me handle being hated. I have practice. But Nia was not the same woman who had sat on the mall floor. Something inside her had cracked open, and through that crack came a kind of terrible clarity. She had spent years trying to keep her pain private because privacy felt like dignity. Now Travis was counting on her silence. He was counting on shame. He was counting on the old habit of women making themselves small so men could remain comfortable. That afternoon, Nia met with Assistant State Attorney Lauren N. Mitchell, a sharp, composed prosecutor who had spent 12 years handling domestic violence cases in Cook County. Lauren did not speak in dramatic promises. She spread the evidence across the table. The restraining order, the mall security footage, the officer body camera, the medical report, witness statements, prior calls to police, text messages, voicemails, photos. Naya had hidden in an email account Travis did not know about. This is strong, Lauren said. But strong does not mean easy. His attorney will attack your memory, your choices, your delay in reporting some incidents. He may suggest you used your father influence. I did not call my father. My daughter did. I know. Will Grace have to testify? Lauren paused. We will try to avoid that. But the defense may push. Her statement matters. Naya's body went still. He already took enough from her. Then we fight carefully, Lauren said, not loudly, carefully. Marcus waited outside the conference room because Nia had asked him to. That small boundary mattered. When she came out, he stood from the bench. How did it go? She thinks we can win. Good. She thinks it will hurt. Also true. Nia looked down the courthouse hallway where lawyers moved past with rolling briefcases and defendants waited with families who looked exhausted by fear. I used to want this, she said. Courtrooms, arguments, justice. I wanted to stand where Lauren stands. Marcus did not answer too quickly. You still might. You always say that like time is generous. Time is not generous, Marcus said. But it is not always finished with us. The bond hearing drew up a crowd because Travis Cole had friends with money and enemies with receipts. Some came to support Nia. Some came for spectacle. Some came because they wanted to see Marcus Bennett in pain. The courtroom belonged to Judge Ellen Harper, a white woman in her 60s who had no patience for theatrics. Marcus sat in the back row, not at counsel table, not near the prosecutor, not where cameras could frame him as the hidden hand. He wore a dark suit and kept both hands folded over a cane he did not need but sometimes carried because Evelyn had once teased that it made him look like an old lion. Nia sat beside Lauren. Grace was not present. Travis entered in a jail uniform, clean-shaven, eyes sharp. For one strange second, Nia remembered the man he had pretended to be when they met. Charming, attentive, quick to carry groceries, slow to reveal contempt. That was the hardest truth to explain to people who had never lived it. Abusers rarely arrive as monsters. They arrive as rescue. They learn your wounds, then later use them as doors. Travis looked back and found Nia. He smiled, not enough for the judge to notice. Enough for her. Marcus saw it. His hand closed around the cane. Judge Harper reviewed the charges. Aggravated domestic battery, violation of protective order, child endangerment, assault on security personnel. The prosecutor argued for detention. Bradley Whitman rose with polished sorrow. Your Honor, Mr. Cole is a lifelong Chicago resident, a successful employer, a father, and a man with no felony record. This incident, while regrettable, occurred during an emotional family dispute. We must be careful not to let a viral video replace due process. Lauren stood. Your Honor, the defendant violated a court order, assaulted the victim in public, obstructed her breathing, ignored the pleas of his own child, and then made statements showing ownership and control. This was not a family dispute. It was targeted violence. Bradley lifted a hand. We also cannot ignore the unusual influence surrounding the complaining witness family. Judge Harper looked over her glasses. Mr. Whitman, unless you have evidence of improper contact with this court, choose your next words carefully. Bradley smiled. Of course, Your Honor. I only mean public pressure. Public pressure did not put your client hands around anyone's throat, Judge Harper said. A murmur moved through the courtroom. Travis' jaw tightened. Judge Harper ordered him detained pending trial. Travis turned as deputies moved him away. This time he did not look at Nia. He looked at Marcus. His lips formed words without sound. Old man. Marcus held his gaze. There was no hatred in Marcus' face, and somehow that seemed to enrage Travis more. Hatred would have made them equals. Marcus offered only judgment. In the weeks before trial, Nia began rebuilding in small, almost invisible ways. She returned to work at the Lakeshore Grand Hotel, where she handled late check-ins and difficult guests, with a professionalism that made her manager apologize for not noticing how tired she had been. Some guests recognized her from the news and stared. One woman slipped a note across the front desk that said, "You are stronger than you know." Nia kept it in her pocket for the rest of the shift. Another guest, a man in an expensive coat, complained loudly that the hotel was lowering standards by putting someone with personal drama at reception. Nia felt the familiar burn of humiliation. Before she could respond, her manager, Denise Parker, stepped beside her. Denise was a white woman from Milwaukee with a smoker voice and no patience for cruelty. "Sir," Denise said, "Ms. Bennett is one of the most capable employees in this building. If her presence offends you, I can help you find another hotel." The man blinked. "I did not mean anything by it." Denise smiled without warmth. "They never do." Later that night, Nia cried in the employee bathroom, not because the man had hurt her, but because someone had stood next to her without being asked. Healing often begins not as confidence, but as surprise. At home, Marcus tried to learn the rhythms of family again. He overcooked pasta. He bought Grace 3 kinds of cereal because he did not know which children liked anymore. He stood awkwardly at the school pickup line among parents wearing leggings and winter coats, holding a small sign that said Grace Bennett because he had seen other grandparents do it. Grace ran to him anyway. "Grandpa, you do not need a sign. I know your face. I wanted to be thorough. You look like Court. Is that bad?" "It is a little scary." The next day he wore a navy cardigan. Grace approved. At dinner, Marcus began teaching Grace what he called standing lessons. Not fighting lessons, not fear lessons. Standing lessons. He showed her how to plant her feet when speaking, how to say no clearly, how to look for safe adults in a room, how to understand that politeness should never require surrender. Nia watched from the kitchen as Grace stood in the living room with her stuffed lion under one arm and said, "No, thank you, I do not want a hug." Marcus bowed his head seriously. "Excellent. A person who loves you will respect that." Grace frowned. "What if they get mad? Then their anger is giving you information." Nia turned away before they could see her crying. Later, after Grace slept, Marcus found Nia on the balcony wrapped in a coat. The river below reflected the city like broken glass. "She is learning faster than I did," Nia said. "Children often do. I used to think love meant patience. If I just waited, he would become who he was in the beginning." Marcus stood beside her. "The beginning was bait." Nia flinched, then nodded slowly. "That sounds cruel." "It is. I should have seen it." "No," Marcus said. "He should not have hidden it." Nia looked at him. "You always make the responsibility go back where it belongs. That is what law is supposed to do. Did it do that for Mom?" Marcus stared at the river for a long time. "Not enough. Tell me about that night." He closed his eyes. He had avoided this conversation for 8 years and carried it every day. "I had received threats after sentencing a man named Victor Harlan. He ran a money laundering operation tied to violent people. The marshals recommended temporary protection for the family. Your mother hated living behind security. She said fear should not choose our groceries, our church, our walks by the lake. I agreed too quickly because I wanted normal life back." His voice roughened. "The night she died, she called me. I was in chambers. I did not answer because I was speaking with the chief judge about security protocols. She left a message saying she thought a car was following her. By the time I listened, police were already at the scene." Nia covered her mouth. She had known pieces, not this. "Why did you never tell me?" "Because I was ashamed, because you already hated me, because part of me thought if you knew I missed her call, you would be right to never forgive me." Nia's voice dropped. "I was angry because I thought you chose Court over us." Marcus looked at her. "I did," she shook her head. "No, not like that." "Yes," he said gently. "Not because I loved Court more. Because I trusted duty more than intimacy. See, duty has rules. Family has needs. I was better at rules." Nia leaned against the railing. "Mom knew that about you. She did. She loved you anyway. That is what made losing her feel like judgment." Nia was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I do not forgive you tonight." Marcus nodded. "I did not ask you to. But I understand more than I did yesterday." His eyes filled. "That is more mercy than I deserve." She looked back into the apartment where Grace slept safely for the first time in weeks. Maybe mercy is not about deserving. The trial began on a gray Monday in Cook County Criminal Court. Outside, protesters stood behind barricades. Some carried signs supporting survivors. A smaller group carried signs about false accusations and family rights, though none of them had watched a 7-year-old child beg on a mall floor. News vans lined the curb. Cameras clicked when Nia arrived in a black coat with Marcus beside her and Lauren Mitchell ahead of them. Marcus did not hold Nia's arm. He walked near enough for safety, far enough for dignity. That detail mattered. Travis arrived through a side entrance with deputies. Bradley Whitman had advised him to look humble. Travis tried, but humility sat on him like a borrowed suit. Jury selection took 2 days. Opening statements came on Wednesday. Lauren began quietly. "This case is not about a private argument. It is about control. Control enforced by fear. Control continued after a court ordered it to stop. Control so bold that the defendant believed he could wrap his hand around Nia Bennett's throat in public and still call it love." Bradley rose after her and spoke of emotion, divorce, misunderstanding, pressure, and the danger of judging a whole life by one video. "My client is not perfect," he said, "but imperfection is not the same as criminal intent." Nia listened. Her hands were folded. When the mall video played, the courtroom became painfully still. Even people who had seen clips online were not prepared for the full angle. The sound, the small body of Grace dropping to her knees. A juror wiped her eyes. Travis stared straight ahead. Marcus looked down at the floor because he had promised Nia he would not make this moment about his reaction. The security guard testified. The clerk testified. The officer testified. The young man in the Bulls hoodie, whose name was Kevin Walker, testified that he had never met Nia before. I moved because the little girl was screaming, he said. Bradley tried to suggest Kevin wanted attention. Kevin looked confused. Sir, I work double shifts at a warehouse. I do not need this kind of attention. Some laughter rippled through the courtroom before Judge Harper silenced it. Then came Nia. She walked to the witness stand wearing a navy dress and the small pearl earrings her mother had left her. Marcus watched her take the oath. For a moment, he did not see the injured woman from the mall. He saw the college student who once argued a mock trial so fiercely that Evelyn whispered, "She got that from you, and I am afraid for anyone who crosses her." Lauren asked Nia to describe her relationship with Travis. Nia spoke steadily at first. She described the charm, the compliments, the quick marriage, the way Travis began correcting what she wore, who she called, how she laughed. She described his jealousy as concern, his insults as honesty, his apologies as proof he cared. She described the first time he shoved her against a kitchen counter and then cried harder than she did. She described believing him when he said it would never happen again, because believing him felt safer than admitting she was in danger. "Why did you stay?" Lauren asked, though she hated that survivors always had to answer it. Nia inhaled. "Because I was embarrassed. Because I had already lost my mother and my father, and Travis made me feel like needing him was the same as being loved. Because leaving is not one decision. It is 1,000 decisions, and every one of them can get you hurt." The courtroom was silent. "What changed?" Lauren asked. Nia looked toward the back row, not at Marcus exactly, but near him. "My daughter started whispering when he entered rooms. I realized fear had become the language of our house. I could live with my own pain longer than I should have. I could not let her inherit it." Bradley Cross examined with careful poison. He asked why she had not reported every incident, why she had accepted money from Travis after separation, why she had allowed him to see Grace before the restraining order, why she had not called police sooner at the mall. Then he leaned on the implication everyone expected. "Ms. Bennett, your father is Judge Marcus Bennett, correct?" "Yes, a powerful federal judge. He is a federal judge, a man whose name carries influence in this city." Lauren objected. Judge Harper warned him. Bradley rephrased. "You understood that once your father became involved, this case would receive extraordinary attention." Nia turned toward him. "My father became involved because my 7-year-old daughter gave his name to police after watching me lose the ability to breathe." Bradley paused. "That was not my question. It is my answer." A few jurors looked down to hide their reaction. Bradley shifted. "Is it possible, Ms. Bennett, that in the emotion of a difficult divorce, you exaggerated my client actions?" Nia held his gaze. "The video did not exaggerate. Is it possible you used this case to reunite with your father and punish Mr. Cole?" For the first time, Nia leaned slightly forward. "Mr. Whitman, I would have preferred to reunite with my father at a birthday party, not a police station." Even Judge Harper's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Bradley sat down soon after. The prosecution rested with Grace's recorded forensic interview played under strict limits so she did not have to testify in open court. Her small voice filled the room. She said Daddy squeezed Mommy's neck. She said Mommy could not talk. She said she prayed because nobody was moving. Then she asked the interviewer if bad fathers could become good if they learned enough. Travis looked at the table, not from remorse yet, from discomfort. He did not like hearing himself described by a child without his control over the language. The defense called character witnesses, business partners, a pastor from a church Travis had donated to twice, a former college friend who said Travis was intense but loyal. Then Travis took the stand against his attorney advice because control had always fooled him into thinking he could talk his way out of consequences. He wore a gray suit and a blue tie. He looked clean, wealthy, wounded. Bradley guided him gently. Travis said divorce had devastated him. He said he loved his daughter. He said he only wanted to talk. He admitted putting his hands on Nia, but claimed he did not mean to hurt her. "I was scared she was taking my child away," he said. "I reacted badly." On cross-examination, Lauren approached with a folder. "Mr. Cole, the protective order required you to stay away from Ms. Bennett, correct?" "Yes." "You went to the mall anyway." "I wanted to see my daughter. You followed them." "No, I saw them." Lauren displayed a still image from security footage showing Travis near the pillar 20 minutes before Nia arrived. "You waited." Travis' jaw shifted. "I was nearby. You wore gloves. It was winter, inside the mall. He said nothing. Lauren played the audio from a witness phone. Travis' voice filled the courtroom. You are nothing without me. Lauren let the words hang. Was that love? Travis looked at the jury. It was frustration. Was telling a woman she is nothing while your hand is on her throat frustration? I already said I reacted badly. Lauren stepped closer. You also said, even your kid knows who has the power. Travis' face hardened. There he was, the mask slipping. I was angry. Power over whom? That is not what I meant. Power over Naya? No. Power over Grace? No. Power over a court order you thought could not stop you. Bradley objected. Judge Harper sustained. Lauren nodded and changed direction. When Officer Angela Brooks placed you under arrest, you said, of course you would take her side. Travis glanced at Bradley. I was upset. Officer Brooks is black. Naya Bennett is black. Judge Bennett is black. Did you believe this case was people taking sides against you because of race? No. Lauren lifted a printed transcript. In the holding area, you told another detainee, and I quote, they are making me the villain because she has some famous black judge daddy. Bradley jumped up. Objection. Judge Harper had the attorney's approach. The statement had been recorded by jail audio after proper notice. It came in. Lauren repeated it. Did you say that? Travis stared at the table. I might have said something like that. Were you angry that a black woman you believed you controlled had someone powerful standing behind her? No. Were you angry that the man standing behind her was a black federal judge? Travis looked up, and for a second the courtroom saw the contempt he had spent days hiding. I was angry that everybody acted like he was untouchable. Lauren's voice stayed calm. No further questions. Marcus sat still. Beside him, grief and fury moved like deep water under ice. He had known racism in polished forms and crude forms. He had seen men resent his robe more than his rulings. He had watched defendants call white judges strict and call him arrogant for doing the same job. But hearing Travis reduce Naya's survival to racial resentment clarified something. Travis did not only hate losing control, he hated who had witnessed him lose it. Closing arguments came the next morning. Lauren stood before the jury and spoke without raising her voice. The defense wants you to call this a bad moment, but a moment can reveal a pattern. In that mall, Mr. Cole did not lose himself. He revealed himself. He violated an order. He placed his hand on Naya Bennett's throat. He ignored his child. He spoke the language of ownership. The law does not require Naya Bennett to be perfect before she is protected. It does not require her father to be powerless before she is believed. It requires you to look at the evidence. Bradley spoke of doubt. He spoke of emotion. He spoke of family tragedy. But his words seemed smaller after the video, after Grace's voice, after Travis' own statements. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Nia spent those hours in a side room with Marcus and Grace. Grace colored at a table while Nia paced. Marcus sat near the door. At one point, Nia stopped and looked at him. How did you do this for years? Wait for verdicts? Yes. Badly, he said. She almost smiled. You always looked calm. That was for everyone else. Grace looked up from her coloring book. Grandpa, if the jury says guilty, does Daddy become good? Marcus and Nia exchanged a look. Marcus answered carefully. No, guilty means the law has told the truth about what he did. Becoming good is work he would have to choose afterward. Grace nodded and returned to coloring. Children accept hard truths when adults stop decorating lies. At 4:17 in the afternoon, the bailiff knocked. The verdict was ready. Nia walked back into the courtroom with Grace holding Claire Donovan's hand behind her. Marcus followed. Travis stood at the defense table. The foreperson, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, read the verdicts. Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Nia did not collapse. She did not cheer. She closed her eyes and released a breath she had been holding for years. Travis turned pale. Bradley put a hand on his shoulder, but Travis shook it off. For the first time, he looked small. Not humble. Smalls. There is a difference. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. In that time, something unexpected happened. Marcus requested permission to submit a statement, not as a judge, not in any official capacity, but as the victim father. Judge Harper allowed it with strict boundaries. Some people criticized him for it before he even spoke. Commentators argued that a federal judge should remain silent. Others said silence was exactly what powerful men had hidden behind for too long. Marcus did not care about either side. He cared that Naya had asked him to say what she could not. The sentencing hearing filled every seat. Naya read her victim impact statement first. She stood with both hands on the podium. Her voice trembled only once, when she spoke of Grace. You taught my daughter to measure rooms by danger, she said to Travis. You taught her that love could become a hand around someone's throat. You taught her to beg for peace from the floor. But you did not teach her forever. I am teaching her now that love protects. My father is teaching her that strength can be quiet. Her therapist is teaching her that fear can leave the body slowly and still leave. And I am teaching myself that survival is not the end of the story. Travis stared at her. At first, his face held the same defensive stiffness. But when Naya said, "I hope one day you understand that losing us was not something we did to you, but something your own hands created," his eyes shifted. Not enough for redemption, enough for the first crack. Then Marcus stood. The courtroom changed with him. He walked to the podium slowly, his cane tapping once, twice, 3 times. On the floor, he did not wear his robe. He wore a dark suit and the wedding band. He looked at Judge Harper first. "Your Honor, I appear today only as Marcus Bennett, father of Naya Bennett and grandfather of Grace Bennett." Judge Harper nodded. Marcus turned toward Travis. The deputy stood near him. Travis tried to hold Marcus' gaze and failed. "Mr. Cole," Marcus said, "I have spent most of my adult life in courtrooms. I have seen men who believed violence made them large. I have seen men who mistook fear for respect. I have seen men who thought apology was a tool to reset the clock until the next cruelty. For many years, I believed the law was the strongest language available to us. I still believe in law. But I have learned through grief. That law often arrives after love has already been wounded." The courtroom was silent. 8 years ago, I lost my wife, Evelyn. I had power. I had a federal commission. I had armed protection. I had a title people respected. And still, when the woman I loved needed me, I was not there. That failure is a sentence I serve every morning. So understand me when I say this. Power that cannot protect the vulnerable is not strength. It is decoration. Travis' eyes lifted. Marcus continued. "You put your hands on my daughter not because you lost control, but because control was the point. You did it in front of your child because you believed fear would teach obedience. You were wrong. Fear can produce silence. It cannot produce love. Fear can bend a person's posture. It cannot make you worthy of standing beside them." Marcus' voice deepened. "A man's strength is measured by the safety of the people near him, not by the bruises he leaves on their bodies. It is measured by whether a child relaxes when he enters a room. It is measured by whether a woman's voice grows freer beside him, not smaller. It is measured by restraint when anger rises, humility when confronted, and accountability when no applause follows." Travis looked down, his hands were clenched. "You spoke of power in that mall. You told my daughter she was nothing without you. But look at her now. She is standing. Look at Grace. She is healing. Look at yourself. You are here because the power you trusted finally brought you to a cage." Bradley shifted. Uncomfortably, Marcus turned back to Judge Harper. "Your Honor, I do not ask for vengeance. Vengeance is too small for what happened. I ask for protection. I ask for accountability. I ask for a sentence that includes serious confinement, no contact, and mandatory participation in a certified batterer intervention program, trauma education, racial bias counseling, and long-term psychological treatment. Not because Mr. Cole deserved, because if he ever leaves prison unchanged, another woman may one day pay for the lesson he refused to learn here." Then Marcus looked one last time at Travis. "Do not confuse this request with mercy that erases consequence. Real mercy tells the truth. Real mercy says you cannot repair what you will not name." He returned to his seat. Nia reached for his hand under the bench. This time, when he held it, she did not pull away. Judge Harper sentenced Travis Cole to 8 years in state prison, followed by strict supervision, permanent no contact with Nia, except through court-approved, regarding Grace if ever allowed, and required completion of specialized programs before any future petition involving parental rights could be considered. Travis did not react when the number was read. 8 years. The same length of time Marcus and Nia had lost to silence. The same length of time grief had sat between father and daughter, like a locked door. As deputies moved Travis away, he turned. Not to Nia first. To Grace, who sat beside Claire holding Justice, the lion. Grace did not wave. She did not cry. She simply watched him with sad eyes. That was the moment Travis began to understand that he had not been defeated by Marcus Bennett, or by the prosecutor, or by a viral video, or by race, or by bias, or by any of the excuses he had gathered like shields. He had been defeated by the truth of what his child had seen. Prison did not change Travis quickly. Nothing real changes quickly. At first, he was angry. He told himself the sentence was political. He told himself Nia had turned everyone against him. He told himself Marcus had used power while pretending not to. He replayed the trial in his mind and edited every scene until he looked like the victim. Men in prison are often skilled editors of their own guilt. But the programs Judge Harper ordered were not designed to comfort him. They were designed to remove hiding places. In the first month, Travis sat in a circle of men who had all said some version of the same thing. I snapped. She pushed me. I was stressed. I only scared her. The counselor, a former Marine named Paul Henderson, listened without expression. Then he wrote one sentence on a whiteboard. Abuse is a choice repeated until it becomes a system. Travis hated that sentence. It followed him back to his cell. In the second month, he was required to write a timeline of his relationship with Nia without using the words but, because, or only. He wrote, I yelled because she disrespected me. The counselor crossed it out. He wrote, I grabbed her because she tried to leave, crossed out. He wrote, I wanted control. The counselor underlined it. Start there, Paul said. In the third month, Travis attended a racial bias session after refusing twice and losing privileges. He sat with arms crossed while a black facilitator named Dr. Renee Lawson discussed entitlement, fear of lost status, and how racism often appears not as hatred shouted in public, but as resentment when black dignity cannot be controlled. Travis scoffed, so now everything is racism. Dr. Lawson looked at him calmly. No, but some things are. Your job is to stop protecting yourself from the question. That night, Travis remembered his own words in the holding area. Famous black judge daddy. He remembered the contempt he felt when Marcus entered the station. Not only because Marcus was powerful, because Marcus did not ask permission to be powerful. In the fourth month, Grace's letter arrived. It came through a court-approved therapist, screened, copied, and delivered under supervision. Travis almost refused to open it because he feared what his daughter might say. Then he feared more what it meant that he was afraid of a child truth. The envelope contained a crayon drawing and a photograph. In the drawing, 4 figures stood near a river. Nia, Grace, Marcus, and a stuffed lion labeled Justice in crooked letters. The sun was too big. The people were smiling. Travis was not in the picture. Behind the drawing was a short letter in Grace's careful handwriting. Dear Daddy, I am learning that love should not hurt people. I do not hate you. I was very scared. Mommy is smiling more now. Grandpa says people can tell the truth and still change if they really work. I hope you learn how to love without making people afraid. From Grace. Travis stared at the words until they blurred. Then he looked at the photograph. It showed Nia in a park by the river, wearing a yellow scarf, laughing at something Grace was doing off. Marcus stood behind them with one hand on Grace's shoulder. He looked older than Travis remembered, but peaceful in a way that made Travis' chest ache with something he did not want to name. Nia's smile was the thing that broke him. Not because it was beautiful, though it was, because he had never seen it when she belonged to him. That was the phrase his mind supplied. Belonged to him. He put the photograph face down and lowered his head onto the metal table in the prison library. For the first time, he did not cry because he was caught. He cried because he saw the difference between possession and love, and the sight of it humiliated him. A guard walked by and said nothing. Sometimes dignity begins when no one interrupts a man meeting his own shame. Travis wrote 3 letters before one was allowed to be sent. The first blamed too much. The second begged too much. The third finally told the truth. Nia received it on a Sunday morning while Grace was at the kitchen table doing homework, and Marcus was making pancakes shaped so badly that Grace said they looked like evidence. Nia saw the prison return address and went still. Marcus noticed. You do not have to open it. Nia held the envelope. I know. She took it to the balcony. The city below was bright with spring sunlight. The river moved steadily, carrying reflections away. She opened the letter. Travis' handwriting was smaller than she remembered. Nia, I am not writing to ask forgiveness. I have no right to ask you for anything. I am writing because the program requires honesty, and for the first time I understand that honesty is not the same as explaining myself. I abused you. I controlled your money, your clothes, your friendships, your sleep, your voice, and your fear. At the mall, I put my hands on your throat because I wanted you and Grace to know I still had power. That was evil. I called it anger. I called it love. I called it family. It was none of those things. It was abuse. I also used race as an excuse for my shame. I resented your father because he was everything I pretended to be, strong without needing to hurt the people near him. I resented you because you stood up. I resented Grace because her fear told the truth about me. I accept the 8 years. I do not know what kind of man I will be when they are over, but I know the man I was cannot be allowed near you. Tell Grace, only if her therapist says it is right, that her letter made me understand something I should have known before she was born. A father is not the person a child fears. A father is the place a child feels safe. I am sorry, Travis. Nia read the letter twice. She did not feel free all at once. Life does not work like that. Apologies do not erase nights of terror. Accountability does not rewind a child's screams. But something in her loosened, not for him, for herself. She folded the letter and returned to the kitchen. Grace looked up. Was it from Daddy? Nia sat beside her. Yes, is he mad? Nia thought carefully. No, he is learning to tell the truth. Grace considered this and went back to her homework. Marcus placed a pancake in front of Nia. It was shaped like nothing identifiable. I was aiming for a heart, he said. Nia looked at it. You should remain in law. Grace burst into laughter. Marcus tried to look offended and failed. The sound filled the apartment, warm and ordinary and holy, in the way ordinary things become holy after trauma. Months passed. Nia enrolled in 2 evening classes in legal studies. Not because she was sure she would become a lawyer, but because she wanted to find out who she was when fear was not making every decision. She still worked at the hotel. She still had hard days. Some nights she woke with her hand on her throat. Some mornings, Grace refused school because a man in a blue coat near the entrance reminded her of Travis. Healing was not a straight road. It was a city route full of detours, construction, and unexpected turns. But they kept moving. Marcus changed too. He reduced his caseload where he could. He attended school events. He learned the names of Grace friends. He sat through a children's musical about farm animals with the same grave attention he once gave constitutional arguments. When Grace forgot her line on stage and froze, Marcus stood in the back and placed his hand over his heart. She saw him, smiled, and remembered. Nia saw it too. Later, outside the school, she said, "Mom would have loved this." Marcus looked toward the sky, where evening light softened the brick buildings. "Yes, she would have told you that you clapped too seriously." "I did clap seriously. You clap like you are approving a motion." He smiled. Motion granted. Nia laughed, and Marcus felt something inside him heal that he had believed was permanently broken. 1 year after the mall incident, Nia and Grace returned to the same shopping center. Not because they needed shoes. Because Grace's therapist said sometimes places of fear can become places of choice if visited safely and slowly. Marcus went with them, but at Nia's request, he walked a few steps behind. The mall looked the same and completely different. The fountain still splashed. The shoe store still displayed bright sneakers. People still moved in streams carrying coffee, bags, impatience, ordinary life. Grace held Nia hand on one side and Justice the lion on the other. When they reached the spot near the glass railing, Grace stopped. Nia felt her hand tighten, but this time it was not panic, it was memory passing through. "This is where I prayed," Grace said. Nia knelt beside her. "Yes, I thought if I was good enough, he would stop." Nia eyes filled. "I know." Grace looked at Marcus, "But it was not my job." Marcus stepped closer. "Never." Grace nodded. Then she reached into her pocket and took out a small folded paper. She placed it near the base of the railing. Nia looked at it. "What is that?" "A note," Grace said. "For scared kids." Nia unfolded it later when Grace was eating a pretzel by the fountain. In careful handwriting it said, "If someone you love hurts someone, it is not your fault. Tell a safe grown-up, you are somebody." Nia pressed the paper to her heart. Marcus stood beside. "Your daughter argues like fire," he said. Nia smiled through tears, "and loves like rain." He looked at her, startled by the echo of Evelyn's words. Nia took his hand. This time, she reached first. That evening, they walked out of the mall into Chicago dusk, 3 figures moving together under the city lights. They were not untouched. They were not magically restored. They carried grief, memory, scars, court papers, therapy appointments, unfinished forgiveness, and the kind of love that had stopped trying to look perfect. But they also carried something stronger than what had tried to destroy them. They carried protection that did not need to shout. They carried power that did not need to bruise. They carried family, not as a picture without cracks, but as a promise renewed by action. The lesson of Marcus Bennett's life was not that fathers never fail. He had failed. He had failed deeply. The lesson was that a father who faces his failure can still become shelter. The lesson of Nia Bennett's life was not that survivors must be strong every second. She had trembled. She had doubted herself. She had stayed too long and blamed herself too often. The lesson was that survival can become testimony when shame finally loses its grip. And the lesson Travis Cole learned too late, but not too late to name, was that a man who rules by fear ends up alone with the echo of his own violence, while a man who protects becomes a place where others can breathe. True power is not the hand that tightens, it is the hand that steadies. True love is not possession, it is safety. And sometimes, after years of silence, the shadow of a father can return not as darkness, but as shade, as shelter, as the quiet place where a daughter and her child finally learn they are safe enough to live again.